materials that I'll be using for this demonstration: some A3 layout paper in this layout pad, a HB pencil, and then I'm using 3 different pens, and I like to use these waterproof fine nib pens. I have 0.1, 0.3 and 0.5, and I also have an eraser which will come in handy, and I have this template here for women's wear. Now, I like to use a few sheets of white paper underneath, and that's important so that you don't see the colour of your table showing through, and it makes it easier to see the template. And then the layout pad that I am choosing to work with just means it's much easier to see through the paper, and it's less confusing than working with tracing paper. Okay, so I'm going to look at drawing a range of different widths of skirts and showing you how to demonstrate different types of fullness at the base of the skirt. So the first one I'm going to work on is the pencil skirt. So when we're working with skirts, we often draw them with the front of the skirt slightly lower and the back of the skirt slightly higher. The fabric tends to be shorter at the front and higher at the back. Okay, so first of all establishing the front of the skirt and then establishing the back of the skirt. And in this case it's going to be a pencil skirt, and I'm going to do it with a facing up at the top because it's easier. So following the shape of the body, I will go slightly wider than the knee, otherwise it would be difficult to walk. Slightly rounded on the hems. So on a typical skirt we will end up with a dart on the front, so coming in roughly the same distance on the other side. So the dart's not too long and parallel to the side, so parallel meaning following the shape of the side. So this would be a very simple skirt. We need to think about how you get into it. In this skirt I am going to put a zip center back, so I'll put a toggle on, and because there would be a facing on the inside, because there's no waistband, it would need some top stitching, and we can't see the darts then through the facing at the back. So now I'm going to do a wider skirt, so maybe A-line, and an A-line skirt tends to look like the letter A, so it'll come down somewhat fitted to the hip and then keep going out. I'm going to stop above this line. Do the same on the other side. And then because we're curved here, again we want to be curved on the bottom. So again, same story. We most of the time don't end up with darts here on the front when it's A-line. So again, I'll put a zip opening in the back, and there will be an understitch on the inside of the waist, showing us where the facing is. If I was to do a 3/4 circle skirt, so that would mean that the fabric would come out maybe to about here and down and back up. So what I'm going to do in this case, if you want to be very specific about how much fabric there is in the hem of the skirt, sometimes what happens is the fabric is drawn fully held out flat on one side and then falling naturally on the other side. So first of all, drawing in the waistline, and then on this half of the skirt I will draw it as it would fall, using maybe a heavyweight cotton fabric, because we need to think of the fabric in this case as well. So it's going to stand out a little bit further, but this time round from here the fabric will fold out, creating a fuller skirt. But on the other side I want to draw it so that you know exactly, if you were the pattern drafter tasked with making the pattern for this skirt, that you would know exactly how much fabric you were cutting. So I would say that that would come out maybe to about here. And a very good test or way of working out the length is to use a piece of paper, and if I mark out here for the waist, and this here is for the hemline, and then if I bring this around following the line of the waist of the skirt, this is roughly where we're ending up in terms of hemline, in terms of hemline, in terms of hemline, and then on the very edge of the skirt here. So the skirt is always the same length from the waist down to the hem. Okay, because sometimes people draw lines straight out and up, and that means the skirt is technically longer on the side than it is in the center. So on this side, the line would come to here, and then this line simply comes down as a smooth line back to the center. Okay, I've gone slightly longer here, but I can fix that when I'm inking. Okay, and at the back, same story. I'll put in a zip and a toggle, and we would see the understitching here. For the last skirt that I'm going to demonstrate, I'm going to show what a full skirt would look like, and I'll use roughly the same type of fabric as I have in the 3/4 circle. So we have the front waistline, back waistline. I'll draw in the zip while I'm here with the understitching on the facing. Now this time round we will have a lot more of this fullness at the bottom if the skirt is hanging straight down. So it'll probably stick the same amount out, but there will be a lot more fullness. Okay, so everywhere where we have one of these lines here, we want to bring them back up. Although, mind you, I could have added in a little bit more here, so I'll just erase that and add a little bit more fullness. So just for fun, if this skirt here was top stitched on the hemline, then I could add lots of stitching following the edge of the outside of the skirt. Now, before drawing the back views of the skirts that I've drawn, what I need to do is to ink them up first of all, and then it's much easier to see through the paper in order to trace off the back views. So again, I've got my 3 pens. For the darts, we're going to go with 0.1. For seams, we're going to go with 0.1. So the only seam we have really is the zip at the back, so that's 0.1, and for the stitching here it will be 0.1, and for everything else we'll use 0.3. So starting off with the 0.3. And the rest of this then will be 0.1. Okay, so what I need to do now is to simply take a second sheet of paper and to put it over the sheet of skirts, and then I can trace off exactly the outlines and then insert the slightly different internal information from the back views Now, working on the back views of the skirts. So from the back, we won't be able to see the front because we've drawn the front lower. So from the back, we're just going to see the same outline. Zip will be in the same place. We have the outline. The side will be the same. Of this side will be the same, and the hem will be the same. Now, because we've decided to do a center back seam or a center back opening, I will need to pop the template back in again. Okay, centering it, and then the center back seam. So everywhere I choose to put a zip, it becomes a seam. That's probably a very common issue with working drawings when people are learning. First of all, often people draw the zip to here and then the fabric is intact here. So it's important to think every time there is a zip, that then becomes a seam. And we will have darts in the back. Quite often you will have double darts, and that's also a hint for what the back looks like. So for the front we have the 2 darts. For the back often we have 2, so I'm going to choose to put 2 here. So the one on the outside tends to be a little bit shorter and the one on the inside tends to be a little bit longer. Okay, so that is the back view for that skirt. So same story, we have the back of the skirt. Drawing a straight line with a pen, I find as a tip, if I balance my hand on the page, hover the pen over, you can practice this once or twice without making a line, dragging your hand towards yourself. I couldn't do it if I had to go across or at some unusual angle. I have to sit at the bottom of the working drawing, rest my hand on the page, test it out maybe once or twice, and then put the pen to the page and go for it. And then point 1 for all of that top stitching that we had in the front view. So I'm only putting it on the outside view. I think it'll confuse things if I put it onto the inside view. Okay, so the last Okay, so to finish then, I've cut the working drawings out, leaving a gap around maybe 3-4 millimeters of white, so I don't go too close to the line, otherwise you'd be cutting through it. So this is the straight skirt, or the pencil skirt, front and back, and the A-line skirt, front and back. So the 3/4 skirt, front and back, and then finally the full circle skirt, front and back.